Okay, and once again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today about how to utilize crowdsourcing as part of your strategy when you're responding to an emergency like COVID-19. We've got Hope Adler and Katya Albanez on the call today, presenting to us about what they did for the Department of Labor. They are longtime users of crowdsourcing and of IdeaScale, and they've got some really entrenched best practices to show you and show how it related to this particular initiative that they did. So Hope, Katya, welcome. Thank you so much for leading our discussion today.
Great, thank you so much, Jessica. And this is Katya Albanese from the ePolicy Works team, and I'm joined, as Jessica said, with my colleague, Hope Adler. We are, as I mentioned, members of the ePolicy Works team, which is a U.S. Department of Labor Office of Disability Employment Policy Initiative. Hope and I are both with Concepts, Inc. It's a small women-owned federal contractor that provides support for education and outreach initiatives on behalf of the federal government with a particular niche in disability employment and other disability-related issues. So to tell you a little bit more, if you're not familiar with our initiative, we, through ePolicy Works, look to help the Department of Labor and inform its policy efforts through the use of innovative tools. And in this case, we're using crowdsourcing and public engagement to help collect stakeholder input and help the U.S. Department of Labor and its partners make decisions around policy development and implementation. We do this through, as I mentioned, collaboration with other agencies within the U.S. Department of Labor as well as outside the U.S. Department of Labor, such as Transportation, the National Council on Disability. We've had collaborations with the General Service Administration and others, U.S. Department of Education, Social Security Administration, Health and Human Services, and like I said, others. All of our campaigns are open to the public because they are used for citizen engagement, as we mentioned. And to date, we've had more than 40 unique crowdsourcing events, which we actually call online dialogues. Our first one took place in 2013, and so over the years, in working with IdeaScale, we've collected best practices, and we learn lessons every dialogue that we host, and we, attribute those lesson learned to, to our process in order to help us have very successful dialogues. And so that's what Hope and I are here today to talk with you about, to share some details about some of our most recent dialogues and to share those best practices with you. So next slide, please. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, some of our most recent dialogues is really what we're here to tell you about. Between March and May, we hosted 2 online dialogues related to COVID-19 and the current pandemic. And as you can imagine, given the circumstances and the environment, online crowdsourcing is a wonderful tool to collect stakeholder feedback and to engage stakeholders during this pandemic. It's online, it's virtual, there's social distancing, you could be shelter in place, and the platform itself is accessible to all, so and from a variety of devices as well. So it's a great platform to use to engage stakeholders. So it allows for quick response, and so that is really what we used it for. So in supporting the U.S. Department of Labor and 2 efforts. So the first was the providing expanding family and medical leave to employees affected by COVID-19 National Online Dialogue. So this was in response to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA. The Office of Compliance Initiatives, in collaboration with the Wage and Hour Division and the U.S. and the Office of Disability Employment Policy, set up this dialogue in order to collect stakeholder input in order to respond to the FFCRA and implementation of regulations and guidance and compliance assistance materials basically in a very short turnaround period. So within the few weeks the dialogue was open, there were more than 36,000 unique visitors. We had more than 5,000 registrants. Of those registrants, more than 2,000 participated, and what that means is in addition to registering, they actually voted, commented, or provided an idea. And the total of those participations is more than 1,300 ideas, 1,200 comments, and more than 13,000 votes. And so what was awesome about this dialogue was not only were we able to put this up very quickly and have all of this participation, the Department of Labor was able to, in real time, inform their efforts. And in fact, 3/4 of the way through the dialogue, they were able to post sample compliance assistance materials that help, to help employers and workers in implementing FFCRA, the Family First Coronavirus Act. And that dialogue was so successful that we did a follow-up dialogue just a few short weeks later on opening America's workplaces again. This was focused on helping, again, employers and workers in safely opening America's workplaces. And that dialogue had 9 federal agencies in total that partnered with the Office of Disability, or including the Office of Disability Employment Policy. So the Office of Compliance Initiatives, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the Wage and Hour Division, the Employee Benefits Security Administration, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, the Employment and Training Administration, Veterans Employment and Training Service, and the Women's Bureau, all Department of Labor agencies, And the ideas that they contributed were all around opening America's workplaces safely, and that included reopening businesses, commuting safely, working safely, reducing regulatory burdens, accommodating members of vulnerable populations, and supporting America's families. And that event was hosted over a shorter period of time and actually started towards the weekend. So we did have a slight difference in the amount of participants, and Hope will talk a little bit more about that as far as our best practices are concerned. But we had close to 18,000 visitors, almost 2,000 registrants. About 735 of those participated, meaning they contributed ideas, votes, and comments. They did post 509 unique ideas, 668 comments, and almost close to 1,800 votes. So again, another successful campaign on a topic of great relevance to help inform real-time agency policy and compliance assistance materials. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hope so she can tell you a little bit more about how we host our communities and campaigns, some of the best practices, how we are able to successfully reach these audiences and get them to contribute in an informed way. Hope?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm going to walk through really quickly kind of how we run our dialogues and how doing these COVID kind of high-pressure, fast turnaround dialogues affected some of our best practices. So the one thing that we always do, and we've done, as Katia mentioned, over 40 what we call dialogues that have a number of campaigns in them, is meet with the agency or the partner who's interested in hosting the dialogue and really go through the why, what, who, when, kind of why are we doing this, what do you want to get out of it, what would your campaigns be, like the topics, who would the audience be, and kind of what the time volume is. We don't want people doing dialogues just to do dialogues. We have a large community that we go to participate in our dialogues, and the only reason they do is because it does matter and make a difference and affect policy development. So for these COVID dialogues, we had actually worked with these 2 agency representatives, women, in the past, and we were very familiar with them. They were familiar with the dialogues, so we were able to sit down really quickly and talk about these aspects, the who, what, why, when for the dialogue. And then another of our best practices is we have a Google sheet, a Google form that we ask them to fill out prior to the dialogue that has some of this information in it. So we met with them, we talked about these things for both our COVID dialogues, and then we had them fill out the Google sheet. Another major best practice for us in doing dialogues, and really showed its strength during these COVID dialogues that Katia discussed, is outlining the responsibilities. What are we going to do as kind of the facilitators of the dialogue? What is IdeaScale going to do on the back end? And then what do we expect our dialogue hosts to do? So for all our dialogues, and this one in particular, we have people who are kind of our point people at the agency. We had two great managers for this dialogue. They were very invested in its success. They were very accessible. We had texts all weekend, all night from them. It was a true partnership. From there, they did a really good job of identifying moderators. So for the first dialogue, I think we had about 15 moderators, all subject matter experts in their part of Department of Labor. And both our dialogues hit on a lot of different aspects of what Department of Labor does. And then for the second dialogue, which was more general, that had to do with opening America's workplaces safely, we had 25 moderators. They worked in shifts. They worked in areas of their own expertise, and the managers of the dialogue really looked upon the host agencies. And for our second dialogue, we had 9 host agencies to supply moderators. They made weekly check-ins. There was training. It was very structured. The moderators also were responsible for not only participating in the campaign in terms of providing comments to ideas, but also quality assurance, making sure that the dialogue stayed on track. There was a lot of concern, as you can understand, about what kind of feedback we were going to get in the dialogue. So we really emphasized the need for the moderators to make sure that we reminded participants the goals of the dialogue, the topics of the dialogues, and then to remove any ideas that were not on topic. Another major role of the moderators in this COVID dialogue, which was different kind of from our past dialogues, is we used moderator tags, and we looked to them with their subject matter expertise to tag ideas, either for the second dialogue was by agency, so really asking them what agency does this idea pertain to, and the reason we did that, and we did it every day, so moderators had to tag all day as well as participate, and with a cutoff at 3 o'clock, because we reported to the different agencies within DOL at usually 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, every single day about the ideas and the participation in the dialogue. So we really looked to the moderators to not only be managing the dialogue or participating, but also tagging the ideas to allow us to do those daily reports. And as far as technical assistance and communications and outreach, I mean, we provided technical assistance along with IdeaScale, they were more than helpful and very agile and quick to respond so that we didn't get any issues with technical assistance. And then communication and outreach, we provided communication documents so that the moderators could then push that out as well, and the managers as well as us reaching out to our community. So we worked together to do outreach for the dialogue. Then, of course, setting up the campaign. As I mentioned, we had a Google sheet that we asked them to provide all the information that goes into our ePolicy Works community. We put up the home page. We provide support pages, and Katia is going to show you these later. For all our dialogues, we have a learn more. We have a step-by-step how to participate. We had information about the different agencies that are hosting the dialogue. We really stress that these dialogues are not only a good way to gather information, but they're also a really good way to spread information. And with COVID and the need to get all this information out about the new regulations, we made sure that we had links in the dialogue to DOL relevant resources that would be helpful to people. We created the campaigns. As I mentioned, we wrote in advance all our promotional materials, all our social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, emails, all that was written in advance and had to be approved. Now, this was something new for us. We always get our dialogues go through some approval process at DOL, but with the COVID task force, the approval process was really everything, all the images, all the wording had to be approved, and there were several stages of approval, so a lot of times we got the dialogue up and then there were tweaks. As Katia mentioned, our second dialogue didn't end up getting approval until Thursday evening, so we ended up launching on a Thursday night, which is never our first choice. We always soft launch on a Monday and launch on a Tuesday, but you know, these dialogues we had to be very reactive, fluid, and you know, especially with the approval process. The step 4 of all our dialogues is communication, right? You can't just put up a dialogue and hope people come. We really need to do outreach, and as Katia mentioned, all our dialogues are open to everyone, the public, but we do a lot of targeted outreach, and for both these dialogues, we wanted to be sure to hear from businesses as well as employees and workers. We needed to hear from both sides. We wanted to make sure we reached families, people with disabilities, everyone who was affected by COVID. So we did a lot of targeted outreach and messaging, all that was approved. We looked to our partners, our agencies that we worked with, as well as employee and employer organizations to help us spread the word. So we always try to reach out to represented organizations to help spread the message as far and wide as we can. We use listservs, that's a big thing, and in the agencies, they have a lot of lists, so we had them push out to all of them. We had them reach out to their formal as well as like informal, letting everybody know and really pushing it out. In this one, for the COVID dialogues, it was really helpful that we had help from the Secretary of Labor. He mentioned it in several speeches and talking points, which was great for us. It really helped spread the word. We always do a lot of social media. We provide tweets. We tweet ourselves, but we also provide tweet language for all other organizations and other agencies and ask them to push it out. We do have a standard email procedure, which includes like a last chance email, a last day email, and we always run our dialogues for 2 weeks, or we try to, and then if we want or need to, we can do an extension, and that allows us to do another push. You know, we're open for 1 more week, which is very effective. Throughout these meetings with our hosts and moderators throughout this dialogue, as I mentioned, we had regular meetings with, you know, online calls with our moderators and our hosts, and we pushed, outreach. You know, a dialogue is only as successful as our outreach. So they were very helpful and since we had 9 agencies, we could really spread the word. We also had continuous support throughout the dialogue from IdeaScale, from our moderators, from outreach, and just really throughout the dialogue, everyone was vested and supporting. What was different about our COVID dialogue is there was a need for daily reporting. So the secretary and other politicals involved wanted to have daily downloads of what was in the dialogue. Who was participating, how many people were participating, visiting, as well as I mentioned, download of ideas based on these tags. So for our first dialogue, which was on the actual regulation, we had quite a number of ideas that were about how the regulation was going to be written, and those ideas were able to get to the people who were actually writing the regulation almost in real time. So a daily download that they could adjust what they were doing based on the feedback that we were receiving. And even with the second dialogue, we were getting word to specific agencies within DOL, OSHA, wage and hour, about ideas that we were receiving in real time. So every day, every evening, we were downloading this information. And IdeaScale was great in helping us pull together what we needed. Another thing about reporting really quick, not only were they tagging the ideas by topic, at the end we had subject matter experts come in and tag the ideas new and novel. So of the second dialogue, I think we had 509 ideas, a third of which were tagged by DOL as new or novel ideas. Now, just to mention some of the lessons we learned during COVID and doing kind of these fast-paced, high-pressure dialogues. The first thing was to be flexible, agile, and responsive. We normally do have a process. It takes a week to do this, it takes 2 weeks to do that, and we really like to be able to test our dialogues and make sure everything's working. In this case, we really had to make changes in real time. IdeaScale was great. We were often on the phone with them. We need to add this person. We need to do this right away. So really being able to use a platform that was agile and allowed for those last-minute changes as the approvals came in was really helpful. They actually ended up adding a campaign at the last minute for one of our dialogues. So we were able to reword the whole page and add a new campaign midstream. Another thing we learned is really our approvals are not final until they're final. The wording, especially in our first dialogue around COVID, was very sensitive and was often changing in terms of what language Department of Labor wanted to use. So we needed to, allow them to make those changes without us going live. So we would have the dialogue up, we would show it to them, they would tweak it. It was a lot of back and forth. And again, IdeaScale was great for that. Again, in this dialogue, as we always do, we really relied on our moderators and their ability to, work up till 3 o'clock tagging. We'd shut it down. The moderating, the dialogue ideas are still coming in, and really let us post those reports. Really we had, which I haven't really talked about, we have moderator documents that we share with our moderators, one that tells them kind of the logistics or the mechanics of moderating, and another one, a document that talks a lot about kind of what to say when you comment, what's the right language, how to stay positive, how to encourage discussion. And for this dialogue, some of the responses needed to be approved that went into the dialogue, especially for the second one. There was some fear that people would be complaining in the dialogue about my employer isn't keeping you safe or whatever. So we brainstormed what we thought some of those comments would be, and then we came up with moderator responses that acknowledged the participant, but then gave them a link to the appropriate place for those kinds of comments. And we really worked hard and showed them that by moderating, you can keep a dialogue on topic and remind people what the dialogue is for. This is not a place to complain. This is not a place to provide, comments about your employer. And there was a lot of fear about that. And in the end, the dialogue was very successful. We didn't have that activity, and I think thanks to the moderators being really just very involved and empathetic in a very stressful situation. We were prepared and able to provide that feedback to leadership that we talked about. Just daily reports, we set up a template and kind of got in a roll to make sure that they were getting the information they need. And then finally, as I said, we have an ePolicy. We've done 40 dialogues. We have a lot of people who have participated in our dialogues, and we work hard to show them that their input matters. We close the loop. At the end of a dialogue, we prepare a report, we share that report, and any policy developments that come out of those dialogues we share. So not only can we use our past performance to show that dialogue can be successful and not scary, and people don't go rogue, but we also use them to lean on our community and ask them to come to our dialogues and participate.
Great. And now we're going to take you through a very quick look at our dialogue, and I know we're running out of time, but Hope, maybe
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we'll provide our contact info as well.
Yeah.
So this is our, okay, go ahead.
So, I was just going to say, if we want to run a few minutes over to give people some time to ask questions, that's okay too, but thank you for showing us the community also.
Fantastic. So do you want to, can you maximize the screen, Hope, for the?
Is it not maximized?
Yeah, maybe, why don't I just, I can also share mine.
You want to stop sharing your screen, Hope, and then Katya can share hers.
Okay.
And if people want to use this time actually to start thinking of some questions that they have for Katya and Hope, go ahead and put them in the chat or go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and then we'll get to asking them right away.
Great. Okay. So are you seeing my screen?
I do, yes. America's
yes,
Workplaces again.
Perfect.
So real quickly, I'm just going to take you to, if you have any questions or would like to see a full list of our dialogues, it's ePolicyworks.ideascale.com, and this is our landing page, and you can actually go to our library, which lists all of the 40, plus dialogues that we posted, and you can find our contact information on this, on our website as well, on that community, excuse me. So Opening America's Workplaces, again, this is the second of the 2 COVID-19 dialogues. And so as Hope mentioned, for each of our communities, we have tabs across the top, and we have pretty standard tabs. We have a home page, which is obviously this landing page. We have a How This Works page, which really is, a step-by-step on how to post an idea and comment and vote. Many of our dialogues, our hosts ask us to help promote some of the resources related to the content, to the subject matter that the dialogue is about. So for this particular event, we had a whole slew of resources from various Department of Labor agencies related to each of the campaigns within the community, so reopening businesses, community safely, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is where stakeholders, participants could find out some more information. Our About Us just generally tells you who is hosting this dialogue. So again, in this case, 9 federal agencies, they're all listed here. A little bit more about what these ePolicy Works dialogues are and, how do I participate. We do have an accessibility page. Just obviously, inclusivity is very important to us as an initiative from the U.S. Department of Labor, the Office of Disability Employment Policy, and so just acknowledging accessibility statement and improvements that IdeaScale has made over the years for universal design and just usability per our stakeholder feedback is included there. And then, of course, just general contact info. So what we normally have here on our landing page, this dialogue is closed. And when it's open, it does say, post idea, but we have, again, a link to the dialogue resources, and then all of our campaigns listed here on the home page. All really you need to do is click on one of our campaigns to see the ideas, and of course, you can search by popular or all. And this is just a listing of the posted ideas, but to give you an example of what some of these ideas look like. And when Hope was talking, we have individuals participating. We also had, organizations participating. So we did have formal contributions in here that were, letters from organizations, signed by, by the head of the agency or head of the organization or on behalf of many members. And so this just kind of gives you an idea of what sorry to be scrolling so quickly, but obviously most of you probably are very familiar with, with how these look. And of course, we also have archived campaigns in this community, and those are all listed here as well, including the FFCRA campaign. So with that,
well, that was a whirlwind tour for sure. But I think that was really helpful to see how you guys have outlined it, not just in this particular online dialogue, but in past online dialogues. Some of those resources I think are very helpful for folks who are encountering this for the first time. So we're starting to have some questions here. The first one is, you could see it when you were sharing your screen there. Sometimes you host Twitter chats as part of your crowdsourcing engagements. Can you tell us a little bit more about that tactic and how it works?
Sure. And this is Katya again. So, again, as Hope mentioned throughout her presentation, outreach is very important. And you really need to reach your stakeholders in order to, tell them about the dialogue and it's happening and get them to participate. So, Twitter is, obviously a platform, a social media platform where there is a lot of engagement in the public, public engagement. And so what we do is host a Twitter chat for an hour on the topic that the dialogue is about. So it's complementary to our, crowdsourcing event. And what we do is we feature guests that represent the stakeholder groups we are trying to target within our dialogue. So, for example, for the COVID-19 dialogue, we had a Twitter chat that had, for the, FFCRA, we had a representative from the employer, the employer community, business community, from the Society for Human Resource Management. We had
oh, that's smart.
From the disability community and Mental Health America, so we usually have 3 to 4 various stakeholders that represent, like I said, the stakeholder group, and we provide them an opportunity to respond on behalf of their constituents, and we pose questions that are, again, complementary to the discussions and the campaigns within the dialogue, and we just get interest. They share this information in the Twitter chat with their members who, pass that, around virally, it gets out virally. And then through that Twitter chat, there's exposure to the topic and the conversation, and people are usually intrigued, and then they want to come back to the dialogue to continue the conversation. That's how we promote the dialogue. Continue the conversation in this event if you're interested in this, in this topic. And we've had really, really good success with that.
So we've got another question here about sort of what sorts of policies were informed by the ideas, or how did the ideas inform the policies?
So for one example, with the FFCRA dialogue, part of the regulation had the word healthcare workers as part of what was covered under the FFCRA, and there was a lot of discussion in the dialogue of what would be the definition of healthcare workers. So,
interesting question.
It ended up they ended up adding a whole group of people who care for disabled children at home, or somebody else, a relative or somebody that needed full-time care, and if they had to stay home because wherever that person was normally getting their care was now closed or unavailable because of COVID, they would be covered as a healthcare provider.
That's great.
So it's a good example of how something that was probably never meant to be overlooked, but maybe hadn't been considered. And, an interesting thing about this FFCRA dialogue is that normally regulations take a very long time to be written, and, there's a lot of more formal ways to provide feedback. So since this regulation needed to be written quickly and within a matter of weeks by Department of Labor, this was, IdeaScale was a very unique way to get really quick feedback from a lot of people. And even though the dialogue was really focused on providing compliance materials, they got a lot of insight in the actual writing of the regulation.
We had a question here about kind of your communication strategy, does a personal touch like videos or calls help when reaching out to get individuals involved?
So we have done actually videos in our dialogues. We've done a couple where, so when you clicked on the community page, we had a video from the Assistant Secretary of Labor, encouraging businesses to participate. We do try to target our outreach so that doesn't seem so, not personal.
Right. And one of the other tactics that we, that we employ is sharing information with organizations that represent the stakeholders, since they are trusted sources of information to their membership. When they share information about the dialogues, there's a little bit of that personal touch and obvious interest that their membership should have. But we do our best to customize all of our, promotional materials, even on subject matter. In certain campaigns, we'll target just campaign, audiences about specific campaigns, knowing that they're interested in that. But yeah, the more you can customize and target, the better response you're going to get. And one of the other things, just real quickly, I know Hope mentioned, just real quickly, one of the other reasons we do have great engagement is because we do share the results of the dialogue. We have summary reports and summarize, not just the activity, but the themes and ideas and that have come out of it, and next steps for the agency. What's going to happen with these ideas, and we keep people informed of actions that are taken, and I think that is very important to our participants, knowing that what they are doing actually
makes a difference.
Yeah, and two of our reports ended up on the Hill with our themes and outputs. So they do really, which is the best part, they really do impact what happens.
Well, I'm going to ask this one last question, and then we'll close it up, and hopefully people can follow up after the webinar too if they have additional questions. But somebody wanted to know about the having to overcome some of the fears people have submitting about employers. How did you help people get over their reservations about submitting?
So, I think we really, our dialogues, this is not the place, right? We're looking for ideas, right? So we work hard that it's not about specific employers. We often do get very personal stories. People share, this happened to me, blah, 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 or my son. And we have a whole strategy for trying to turn those personal stories into ideas, and we have that's part of our moderator documents. Thank you for your input. How do you think this could be addressed? How do you think, what policy would have made this easier for you? And really trying to get away from the personal stories. We do have a, no personal identifying information in our dialogue, and ideas can be removed or edited if they have any personal identifying information. I think that by using moderators and having them respond both to the personal stories and reminding people that the goal of the dialogue is for ideas.
One other tactic is one of the things, to get people to participate, what we found, and it is yet to not be true, I think, is that first idea is very important when you're looking for participation. So it's another one of the tactics that we employ. It's just to have an idea ready to go by one of the key stakeholder groups, kind of letting people know the dialogue's happening, and if they can post an idea, because really we see almost no activity. Well, we see quite a bit of time lapse before the first idea will be posted, unless there is, and once that first idea is up, there is an onslaught of ideas. But that first one sometimes can take quite a bit of time. So we've learned over the years if we can get, that first idea ready to go and prompt our stakeholders, the engagement, it happens pretty quickly.
take away that blank page anxiety.
I want us to be the first one for some reason.
I know, and that's really why we do a lot of times that soft launch on Monday, is that we let the people know, that are close to the dialogue that this was going to be starting, and it allows us to address any technical issues or just to get the ball rolling, and then we do our big push on Tuesday. Hopefully there's already a few ideas in every campaign.
Exactly.
Well, this has been very, very helpful to see how you're using it, especially during these times. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk everybody through it and for making your contact information available there. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again as you host future dialogues. So thank you, Katya and Hope.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.